Hello there, and welcome to the EDC Empire. Today we'll be taking a look at the Buck 110 Elite Auto made by Buck Knives. The Buck 110 Elite Auto is a USA-made buck and is an automatic version of their more classic or their well-known 110 model. There is basically one big difference between the auto and the standard, which is it has this little button and you press it open. That does mean that it is classified pretty much everywhere as an automatic knife. And other than that, and the materials, which there is a Buck 110 auto version which has the same materials as this standard 110 right here with 420 HC, brass and wood, but the Elite version has S30V, nickel, and G10 covers. Other than that, pretty much they're the same thing, but we will still go over standard specs and measurements of the Elite Auto, and then we'll get into my thoughts on the Elite Auto. Going forward in the review, I may just refer to this as the Buck 110 Auto, but for things like weight, I will be only meaning the Elite version, but pretty much everything else should be the same, whether you have the version with brass and wood or nickel and G10. The lock is, of course, their standard lockback with a button opening deployment. You cannot just pull it open, you do have to press it open. And if you're curious how these work, there's a whole bunch of people on YouTube who have tried to make their own with just a standard Buck 110 and just a whole bunch of messing around with stuff. Basically, this uses a lever that when you press down, this lever pivots up, and then this pin is pushed up, and this pin is right here in the blade stock, and then the blade gets flung open. That's the very basic thing. So if you're into that kind of thing, this is actually a really interesting piece. The pivot is unfortunately pinned, as is with all Buck 110s, most Buck 110s, the Buck 110s of the brass and nickel style, but there are some that are screwed, but none of the auto versions are. This, as I mentioned, is CPM S30V, but there is a 420 version as well. And then you have the kind of standard clip point with a hollow grind. And then, as I've mentioned a number of times, a nickel silver bolsters with G10 covers for this version, and brass, and I believe this is ebony wood for the kind of standard non-elite version. You have an overall length of 8.66 inches when open and 4.94 inches when folded. And you have an overall depth when folded of 1.27 inches and a width at the pivot of 0.61 inches, which means this is a pretty beefy boy. Getting into some size comparisons, we have the Para 3 and the PM2 and the Para 3. As you can see here, it is larger than both of these by a pretty considerable margin. And then we've got the QSP Penguin and the Subibi Elementum. Again, larger than both of these by a pretty significant margin. And then finally, we've got the Benchmade Bug Out and the Spyderco Delica 4. Again, larger than both of these. This is just a generically big knife. There's nothing really small about it. If you want a smaller variation of this, there is the Buck 112. Don't ask me how they got their naming scheme. But I like the 110. I chose the 110. So, yeah. But if you are looking for something smaller, the 112 is another option. You have a blade length of 3.70 inches and then an edge length of 3.37. Then you have a blade stock of 0.12, which gets down to a very reasonably thin both edge and tip, which means that for slicing tasks, this is going to be fantastic. For prying, I wouldn't really recommend it, and it's just a fantastic EDC shape and profile. Buck does a really nice job with their clip point, where it's very usable, and you still get that kind of cool aesthetic of a clip point. And then you have a weight, and this is kind of the unfortunate part, of 7.6 ounces. And that's going to be even more with the standard variation with brass and wood. So, yeah. As you can tell throughout this review, as I've opened it, the action of the auto is not like a ProTech, for example. This is the ProTech Rockeye, which I've done a review on a couple weeks ago. And yeah, this is much snappier. But it's actually still pretty respectable. And if you oil it up and it gets broken in, it's actually gotten up quite a bit faster. And it hasn't kind of stopped at any point. It's very consistent. It kind of feels like an assisted knife in that it gets flung out for the most part in the first, like, this section mainly, like, and then there's like a bit of a springitude right here, but you can really feel the spring really gets engaged here. And then there's kind of stuff happening where it'll kind of fling, but doesn't. It's kind of half-hearted. And then right about here, there's no more spring left, and it's kind of just free-floating. But overall, yeah, there is automatic action. It is not insane. If you have a ProTech, it's going to be less snappy than that. But if you've never experienced it, you're going to be pretty happy with it. And even if you have, I have no complaints with the snappiness of it. That's actually one of my favorite parts, is that it's more of a, I don't want to say refined, but a more subdued automatic. The G10 covers fit really well on the nickel, and everything just fits together very well on this. Especially, yeah, just Buck does a good job with their fit and finish on their 110 and 112 as well. They just do a good job. Everything fits together well. So, yeah. Unfortunately, with the good fit and finish on the handles and on the blade, there is that factor of it being pinned, which means that there's a little bit of side to side. That's with pretty much all Bucks, whether it's auto or not. This 110 has a little bit of blade play. The auto has a little bit more. But yeah, it's unfortunate, but it's not the worst. I believe it didn't come with blade play, and it gained some, which is kind of to be expected. But it's not bad by any means, and there's really no up and down. It's mainly just side to side, so that is good. I've carried this both in the sheath that it comes in. Actually, this is the standard 110 sheath, the sheath that it comes in. And also, just dropping it in my pocket. Really, neither are perfect, in my opinion. This thing is so heavy that even with a belt, just kind of dropping it, you feel it. And putting it on the sheath, I don't like having just stuff attached to my sheath or to my belt. It's just not my favorite thing, especially just a knife, kind of just chilling out. But it's not the worst either. I would love it. I would probably buy another one of these in a heartbeat and possibly sell this if they made a variation with a pocket clip. They have Slim Pro variations of their standard 110, and then they have like stuff like this 2021 exclusive, which has a pocket clip and stuff. It would just be awesome if they could make a variation with maybe aluminum, micarta, and a clip. And honestly, this would be kind of awesome, and I would totally carry this even more than I have, which I've still carried it. It's kind of fun, especially, yeah, it's just fun. The Bose heat treat is, as always, fantastic. Combined with the blade profile, it's just great. No complaints. Their S30V is heat treated just as well as their 420 is, which means it's just heat treated just as well as their S45. And yeah, I've had no issues. Similarly to Spyderco, Buck has a fantastic heat treat, and you can't complain about it really. And because also, as I'm getting back to the pocket clip, because there is no pocket clip, the ergos on this are fantastic. You can kind of choke up right here and get really close to the blade. You can choke back, or you can kind of go into your standard grip. Pinch grip works pretty well. Kind of a whittling grip works well. If you really want to go tactical, you can do that. Everything works really well on it. Yeah, just pretty much every grip. It's a very, it basically feels like you're holding onto a stick, and it's very well rounded off, so nothing really gets in your way. Getting on to recommending whether I recommend this knife or not. I'm torn. I love this thing, but I also can't say it has the same market appeal as the Para 3. This is totally going into my specialized thing, where if you want it, this is a great option. I love this kind of more subdued opening. It kind of feels like the Italian stilettos I've opened. I imagine this as my kind of American stiletto. But it's also a piece of crap to carry. I don't know what the best way of carrying it is, honestly, and I don't really know if Buck does either. Getting just really quickly back to their sheath, to make sure that it doesn't go off in your pocket, which, to be honest, I'm not really worried about. They've added an extra layer of leather there. Other than that, it's pretty much the same thing. It's actually made in the USA instead of Mexico, and it's probably made a little bit nicer, but it's pretty much the same thing other than that. And to be honest, I'm not really too worried about it going off. Like I said, I've carried it in my pocket. I've carried it with other things in there. I've pressed it against an actually hard surface instead of this little foam thing, and it doesn't go off. You actually have to press it a decent bit. It's not the most difficult thing to do. I could see it happening, but I'm not too worried about it. Honestly, if you're, yeah, it's not too much of a concern. But carrying it, it's just, I don't know. I like it. I like it a lot, but I don't know. Yeah, it's not super recommendable for carrying. But I've also had a lot of fun with it. As a desk knife, or even if you like to carry things on your belt, this is a great option. If you're curious about it, it's also really fun. I have a sweet spot for the 110. Like I said, I have this 2021 version, which it's not perfect, but I carried it for a year and a half. This was actually kind of what got me into this, and my Mannix too. What got me into EDC and whatnot, and this thing has treated me really well. I never really had to fully resharpen it, give it a little strop, and it's still razor sharp, and that's kind of what my feeling is with this. I've not felt the need to really even strop it with the carry time I've given it. I've given it the same carry that I've give all the reviews, going to work, testing it out, and yeah, it's been great. It does breaking down boxes, it does stripping wires, it does cutting metal wires, it does any other task that I needed it to do it. Yeah, it does most knife tasks really well, but recommending it, it's just, yeah. If you like this, go for it. But if you're looking for something super EDCable and you want an auto, look at a ProTech. I really recommend the Rockeye. Actually, getting them side by side, they're decently comparable. It's larger, but yeah, I mean, it's not the greatest EDC option. But I still really like it. Yeah, that might not be the greatest conclusion ever, but that's what I'm gonna have to end it at. If you own the Buck 110 Auto, comment down below what you think about it. And if you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing. Thanks for watching.